additionally by the end of just this month, if some of those estimates are right. And that's probably why we're seeing so many big companies announcing plans to expand. In the case of United Airlines, by 24 737 MAXs at a minimum in anticipation of a busy flying season to come. Maybe not right away, but soon. And then you get retail numbers out of like a Target and Kohl's that said even now, sales are robust and the consumer is interested in buying. It's in that environment that Senator Chuck Grassley says, do we really need a $2 trillion stimulus package? The Iowa senator with us right now. Senator, very good to see you. How are you feeling, by the way?
Oh, very good. If you're referring to last November when I had COVID, isolated for 14 days, I was asymptomatic except for some fatigue, and I feel very good, and thank you for asking.
No, you're tough. The virus didn't know what it was dealing with, Senator, so I'm glad that went okay. But speaking of the virus, Senator, and all these vaccines, and now rivals like J&J and Merck working with each other to get out still more vaccines, what do you think of this environment?
Well, first of all, understand that normally when you're dealing with vaccines, you're talking about 5 or 6 years and then you don't usually manufacture until you get it, and they had a slow process of manufacturing. What has really happened now is with new platforms to take off from for various vaccines, you're having, not only are they able to do the research and the development much quicker than they used to, but you also can manufacture a lot faster. In fact, these companies didn't have the manufacturing capability. They're all making deals with other companies to maybe stop manufacturing some of their vaccines, shift over to making it for the COVID vaccine. And it's just the free market system and our competitive system working. And in this case, you're getting a lot of cooperation between pharmaceuticals companies and those companies in the government. And it's just a phenomenal thing, but an absolutely necessary thing in order to cover something that a year ago we didn't even know how bad it was going to be.
You know, Senator, it's bad enough for Democrats to say to a man and woman, we're going to need this stimulus. Some balk at the ultimate price figure, and I know you're in that camp as a prominent Republican, but the president will be meeting with the entire Democratic caucus to find a way to get this through. I know you're a no vote on this, and it doesn't look like any Republican at this point would pass this. If that is the case, do you see every Democrat approving this and this ultimately being decided by Kamala Harris, the vice president?
Oh, it'll be a 51-50 vote, assuming everybody's there, and I imagine everybody will be there. And it's something that's so different from the 12 months of cooperation we had on fighting the virus, which was basically 5 bipartisan bills that got through almost unanimously in both houses. And then to have this environment come along, which basically is just a bill of a lot of wish-list Democrat things that they didn't get in other bipartisan bills, and they got enough votes to do it partisan, so we're going to go for broke. And that's exactly what they're doing, and they're going contrary to the inflationary, anti-inflationary advice that Larry Summers, former Democrat Secretary of Agriculture, president of Harvard University formerly, and outstanding economist, said that you better be careful with the pent-up savings that people have, plus other COVID money that isn't even out of Washington before you get this $1 9/10 billion in it, with the economy gearing up, so probably by April we'll feel very positive about the end of the year. It's not the time to be feeding the flames. And I remember when I first came to Congress, Nixon resigned, and he had us on an inflationary point at that time, and we had 22% interest on car plans as just one example of how out of control it can get just almost overnight. And they aren't heeding the advice of their own liberal Democratic economists.
All right, and you're referring to 73 when we had the first oil embargo and energy prices went crazy and so did inflation. But, you know, Senator, do you think, and maybe it wasn't his intention, that Donald Trump set the table for this when he urged everybody before leaving Washington to go big on stimulus. The bigger, the better. That began to be the clarion call at Wall Street: big, 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 big. I didn't hear a lot of criticism of that strategy, even at CPAC. Has everyone sort of lost their resolve on spending? Does that worry you?
No, they kind of have lost their resolve, but right now the chickens are coming home to roost. And in just a few months, we'll see this pent-up spending or pent-up savings that's going to be spent, and even government spending that's not out there yet. And then you add the $1 9/10 trillion to it that's going to pass by a week from now. It's just a program for disaster.
So you think a week from now, Senator, this is a done deal? This plan is a done deal?
Yeah, I believe so. That's their goal, and they can deliver on it. And Republicans are going to just try to use every opportunity we can to point out how irresponsible it is. And there is, even on Republicans' part, even Chuck Grassley would say there are still some people hurting. There's still some small businesses that maybe need some help. And there might even be some more needed for the schools, K through 12, because of the pandemic. But it would be a fraction of the $1 9/10, a very small fraction of the $1 9/10 trillion that's in this bill.
Senator, Elizabeth Warren is apparently advising Vice President Kamala Harris to go ahead and ram that $15 minimum wage through. That the parliamentarian doesn't have the final say on this here, and then that parliamentarian, she can be overruled. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, if she would rule are you saying that she's being advised to rule that it can be in the bill or not be in the bill?
Yes, that Elizabeth Warren is telling Kamala Harris, we want that $15 minimum wage in the final measure. You can do it by simply forcing the issue. Can she?
It will blow up everything we know about the responsibility of what we call the Byrd Rule. That goes back to the 1980s, that right. In a reconciliation bill that you just had a 50 vote, you don't have the 60 vote requirement. It had to be very tightly oriented towards fiscal things. And the $15 minimum wage, according to the parliamentarian, doesn't meet the Byrd rules, and it would blow up everything. And it would just make reconciliation in the future just a way of having the nuclear action that we call doing away with the 60 vote requirement. And it would change the Senate historically from what it's been for 240 years. It'd make it just like the House of Representatives. Minority points of view wouldn't have any voice at all, and in the process, you wouldn't have the intent that the Senate was supposed to fulfill of giving cautious approach to legislation that the Constitution writers implied in 1787. And it's worked so well, and it shouldn't be changed.
Senator, I know you weren't at CPAC, but I wonder what you made of a lot of the comments there, because Republicans have seemingly forgotten Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment of not speaking ill of other Republicans. Liz Cheney got an earful, Mitt Romney got an earful. Critics and those who voted to impeach the president or convict him in the House and the Senate, there's a lot coming and directed at them. What did you make of all that?
Most of those people there would honor Reagan. And you know what Reagan said about it? The 11th commandment, speak no ill of a fellow Republican. And that's what I believe. And they shouldn't have done otherwise.
Do you think the president encouraged them?
Well, he spoke, his speech was the last one, so I can't say that he encouraged them because he was the last speaker. I think it's probably just pent up resentment that we didn't win the election. I have that same ill feeling about the voters because I liked the policies of Trump, even though there were a lot of personal things about Trump I might not like. He had very good policies for our country. And you could list 50 of them. If I just had a sheet, I'd read 50 very quickly. I could write down 50 very quickly.
But he did in fact, Senator, say that all of those who voted against him in the House and then in the Senate should be challenged. They should be thrown out of there. I'm just wondering what you think of that.
Well, the Republican Party, at least for the last 80 or 90 years, has always had less adherents than what the Democratic Party had. So if we ever want to be a majority party, we got to be a big tent party. And not only that, but our party is healthier when you have internal debate and disagreements, just like the Democrats are having now between progressives and the more moderate Democrats. It strengthens our democracy. And why wouldn't you want everything to be thoroughly discussed and every point of view, and be an inviter into your party rather than kicking people out of the party?
Sir, are you going to run for re-election? A lot of people want to know what your plans are for 2022.
I hope you'll have me on, and I hope you'll have me on in September, October, November, and I'd be glad to answer that question.
So that's when the decision will be made?
Well, I can't wait much later than that, and normally I'm in no hurry to announce